Hi and welcome to this chat with Tushar Gandhi, who needs no introduction. And we've just found out that we are in love with the same guy, been in love for years, Wilbur Smith, his travel companion and one of my favorite authors. But we're not talking about books today. We're talking about a lecture that he did earlier today, and based on that, a few things, short things with him. Thank you for speaking to us,
Lovely.
and thank you for
Thank you
your
so much.
time. Thank you for your time. Quickly, one thing I wanted to ask you based on the lecture today is that you had said that mass movements are missing in India. You
Hmm.
don't see people in the streets. One question that we had is that is it because mainstream parties, which are not cadre parties, are losing their connect with the people, are not able to message to the general public what exactly they feel about things?
The alienation between political parties and the masses is one of the contributing factors. But the other factor is that we have become introverted too much as a general public, and unless an issue affects me personally, I don't think of acting on it, and I'm always apathetic towards it. That attitude has also contributed largely to. There's a Punjabi saying which is very appropriate, which says, "Menu ki." How does it matter to me?
Okay.
How does it matter to me? That attitude, or how does it matter to me, is one of the major contributing causes to this. But I agree with you that many of the mainstream parties, as we refer to them, have lost touch with the masses. They cannot appeal. They're not no longer appealing to the masses, and the masses sort of say, "Oh, this is a political thing. Let the politicians handle it," kind of thing. And so there, that also contributes to the entire complacence that we see in society.
You remember Mr. Amit Shah's comment about the Chaturbaniya and that Congress
Yes,
should be
yes,
shut down and so on. Congress had this pull during the independence movement, in every home almost.
yeah,
Later, that kind of fizzled out, and currently you feel that that is not there anymore. It's a unifying factor across the country.
yeah.
Why do you think? Where did Congress go wrong? Where did it fritter away that advantage
Um,
that way?
the main cause of this is the transformation of the Congress from a mass-based party to a Darbari party. Now, the Congress is seen as a Darbari party where there is a court and courtiers hold sway over everything. And so people feel alienated. You talked about its connect pre-independence, but
Yes.
even for the first 4 decades after independence, Congress had that connection. If you look at the first 4 years of Congress rule in independent India,
Yes.
every smallest of village would have a Congress household
True. Yes.
in it. And that hamlet, the people of that hamlet would feel reassured that if they had a problem, then there was a family in the hamlet, in their neighborhood, who could reach their message right up to the national capital and revert back to them after the resolution of that. Slowly that died out, and the Congress never bothered to re-establish that contact. And that is what has affected the Congress the most. And so that is where you see the resurgence after Rahul's Bharat Jodo Yatra, when for the first time in a long time, a Congress leader, senior Congress leader, actually walked the roads of India. And you could make out the tumultuous welcome that he received was because of the feeling that where were you? Where were you? And when that happened, when such a senior Congress leader came in the midst of the common people in India, the memory is revived. I grew up, of course, I grew up seeing that connect because in my house, we used to have all the senior Congress leaders of the, as I called, the first 4 decades of India, independent India, were like family members, extended family members to us. So I grew up seeing that connect. But there were other households also where the generation after me grew up listening to their parents talk about how once so and so had revisited their home or how they could connect with that person and things. That is no longer true. And that is where the alienation has set in.
I feel that because even in Kerala there are homes that are
Yeah.
still known by Gandhiji Vanna Veed, like
Yeah.
the house to which Bapuji had come.
Well, on every trip to Kerala that I have made, I've been shown a house where Bapu visited. I've been shown an institution where Bapu has visited. So I keep discovering, like on one of my visits to, it was I think near Payanur somewhere in that district or somewhere. I was taken to a railway siding
Okay.
where Bapu and Ba had alighted from a train, Kasturba,
Okay.
and a temple where the family that controlled the temple had not allowed the lower castes to enter. And after Kasturba's request, they voluntarily threw open that temple to the untouchables. And I was taken to that. So I also keep discovering these places associated with the history of my ancestors.
You mentioned the Bharat Jodo Yatra,
Yeah.
and you had walked
Hmm.
during with Mr. Rahul Gandhi there. Did you actually feel this of this? You said, "Where were you all this while?" And that question
Yes,
was there.
the emotions that common people express simultaneously, or in the way they welcomed him into their localities, into their villages. And I only walked with him for one day. But even in that one day's walk, what I noticed, because we walked through rural areas of India
Okay.
and then entered a town. So I got to see the responses of both groups of Indians. And you could see in their eyes that they had memories of Indira Gandhi doing such spontaneous things. And then they had a gap. And now somebody from that family had done it again. And so that yearning, that longing was very apparent in, and that showed that the goodwill still carries on. The Bharat Jodo goodwill still carries on today. Because if you look at it dispassionately, the party has not done anything to capitalize on the goodwill that Rahul managed to create. And yet, that goodwill survives.
I understand.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you had the opportunity to visit both villages and urban areas
Yeah.
in that one walk. India is rapidly becoming urbanized in
Hmm.
pockets, and
Hmm.
then people are moving to urban areas. Do you think that coming back to our initial question about mass movements, when we come to urban areas, we kind of get disjointed. I mean, we don't have a support
Hmm.
system, no family, no friends,
Yeah.
and so on. You barely know your neighbor.
Right.
Has that affected this political awareness of the
It
new India?
has. It has. And the urban society, because of its necessity of the lifestyle, is very self centered. And so it's very difficult to unify that mass because very less common grounds have survived on which you can bring people together. And so it becomes very difficult to spread the message. Even if you are doing a movement, to spread that message becomes almost impossible because of very specialized interest groups, very specialized uh, and specific groupings. So to penetrate that, it becomes very difficult. You don't find a common place where people with disparate backgrounds will come together. So in the rural areas, it's much easier.
Yeah.
But in the urban centers, as you said, you don't even know your next door's neighbor. So it becomes that much more difficult.
Before we were waiting for you, we were talking about ourselves and we were talking about the BJP's messaging. Now
Hmm.
you look at urban areas, the BJP seems to have cracked this code that you said about not other parties not being able to reach people,
Yeah.
but the BJP has been able to do that very effectively.
Uh,
Uh,
Over here, I'd like to disagree. If
okay,
BJP was on its own,
okay.
it wouldn't have managed to do that.
Oh, I see.
BJP's communication and outreach is handled by a militarized cadre based party, the RSS. And that is what benefits the BJP.
BJP.
If and we've seen it whenever RSS has distanced itself from BJP, BJP finds it very difficult to reach its message to the masses. Electorally, also, whenever the RSS has sulked, the BJP has lost. But when RSS works as its fifth columnist, the BJP reaps the advantage
Dividends.
of it. So, unfortunately, the Congress also used to have those outreach arms. Sevadal, if you look at pre-independence and immediately post-independence India, Sevadal were the last mile contacts of Congress. Every locality had Sevadal volunteers, every village had Sevadal volunteers. So the congressmen did not have to go to those places. Sevadal was a representative enough to pass on the message of the Congress. 4 decades down the line, Sevadal was completely marginalized, and now they are just there as. Just yesterday, somebody at the convention that is happening over here said that we've reduced them to becoming chaprasis. And so that is where the difference is seen. Otherwise, what RSS is doing for the BJP, Sevadal used to do for the Congress party.
Again, coming back to the mass movement, lack of mass
Mhm.
movements. Many places you will read that, for example, it is the protest against the Rowlatt Act that actually brought Bapu out as
Yeah,
a star figure, put him in the
limelight.
limelight after. Um, so why do you think, despite the new laws that are coming in, we don't have an emerging figure, like one central figure around whom people can't rally about? That is also the part of the BJP's messaging that there is Modi on that side.
Hmm.
Then here who? I mean, they have ridiculed and lampooned Rahul Gandhi to an extent where
Yeah.
he is Papu and so on. So is it because a change in the times, or don't we have like tall people of that stature?
See, we must remember one thing that the entire independence movement,
Yes.
even though Bapu was a figurehead icon, but the entire Congress, which was the grouping of the freedom movement, had a collective leadership. And everything was done by the collective leadership, the decision making of the collective leadership. And that was the strength of the Congress. Even for the Nehru Congress and the post Nehru Congress, right up to Indira Gandhi, post emergency, the Congress had collective leadership. Although they had an iconic figurehead, it was collective leadership. Only post emergency, when Congress broke and Indira Gandhi became paranoid about betrayal and things, that she systematically purged the collective leadership model and established the hegemony of a singular titular leader kind of thing. And that has weakened the Congress the most. And that is where today, with the lack, I don't see a mass movement happening by a singular leader. You look at what happened with the Anna Hazare movement. For a time being, we felt as if a messiah had arrived on the Indian public scene, and he was going to be the messenger of God and cleanse everything. But that bubble burst very soon because it was personality cult, and people see through those shams. And so, even today, if a public uprising has to happen, it will only happen if it is a collective leadership at the helm. And I'm not saying there might be an iconic figurehead, but the strategizing and decision making has to be collective. And I keep telling the Congress also that it has to go back to its model of collective leadership if it wants to beat the juggernaut of the BJP RSS.
Usually it's the youth that takes to the streets in anger,
Yeah.
And then we were talking about Bapuji and said he was a barrister. He went into the movement. So he did not eventually have a life that a barrister of those days could have had,
Yeah.
perhaps. There's a cost involved to that. Now, do young people don't come into the fray because of the cost, of the great personal cost that is there? Is that a reason? What do you feel?
It is definitely a reason. It takes a lot of courage to be able to voluntarily accept the hardships. And I don't grudge the young people that, because that's a very natural thing to happen. But somebody will have to make the sacrifice. Somebody will have to say, okay, I'm going to do that. And we see it in a small form. We see the Medha Patkars. Medha Patkar could have had a good career of her own, but for the Narmada, she gave up everything, and she's dedicated her life to that, and she's built up a cadre of herself. There are others also who have done that, who have sacrificed. See, the thing is that young people are forced to measure success in monetary sense. They don't realize that when you reach, yes, there are years of struggle, maybe a decade of struggle before you establish yourself as a leader of reckoning. And then the support system automatically develops under you, behind you, which takes care of all the basic requirements of a successful person. So it's only the hardship is only from the beginning to reaching that stage. And I agree that only 5 out of 100 or even less might make it that way. But there is a support system that takes care of you once you have established your antecedents. So it's not as if all the lifelong you will be, because for all his renunciation, Bapu managed to establish his ashram, which took care of his limited requirements, but they were all taken care of. It wasn't as if he was, on the streets. So those basic requirements finally do, in some way or the other, be taken care of. So that fear of the initial struggle, but then any professional career, if you venture out on that, you have to struggle. And not everybody has spectacular successes. But most people manage to eke out a decent living for themselves after having initially suffered because of their decision. It's the same in activism also.
You spoke about self-restraint, about not saying things that are not contributory, that doesn't build. If you look at the right-wing ecosystem, they also say the same thing about journalists. You should be self-restrained. Every country has bad things, but
Yeah.
you should not play it up, or so on. So how do you look at both these views?
You see, the right wing's perception about journalism today and media today is they want the media and the journalists to behave like Bapu's three monkeys, shutting their eyes, stuffing their ears, and closing their mouths, kind of thing. That is not what self-restraint means. Self-restraint is you say the things that are required to be said, but you say them in a manner that is responsible, which decides whether you want to reform or you want to instigate. There's a difference between the two. And what I meant with self-restraint was refrain from instigating, but don't refrain from exposing what is bad and asking for redress for it. But don't go and say this is wrong, go burn it now. Or this fellow is wrong, take law into your hands and lynch him or her. That is where restraint is required. And that we are not seeing today. In the irresponsible chase for fame and viewership, the only thing that they have not done is openly call for murder. Otherwise, they inflame passions, they become justice, judge, jury, and hangman, and they do all those sorts of things. And that also leads to this spate of lynchings and mob frenzy is part of that. Because where, you keep stuffing poison, somewhere it's going to become apparent. And for a common person, it'll only be in an explosion of violence.
It's in this context that you said that journalism is basically a non-violent profession, and then some people have weaponized it. So I'm thinking that this is the context in which you said that about that.
And because they get patronage, they get emboldened to continue doing the same.
You had made a reference to the Hema Commission report about actresses come up. And then you had said that these sexual offenders, they deserve to be shunned, or, in the sense that. And then my doubt was the sentence that came after. You said whether they are punished or not by the court, that is secondary to it. Is it fair to look at it that way? Because most people look at the court's judgment, or as so lots of people can be accused. Let me put it that way, but only those who are convicted are really the ones who are at Rome.
You see, my reason for saying that was that a court's judgment is based on evidence.
Yes.
And not in all cases of sexual abuse or sexual exploitation, there'll be an evidence trail.
Yes, of course.
But for a woman, or 9 out of 10 women, the decision to go public with the crime committed, and such a crime, a sexual exploitation crime being committed against her, will come after a lot of traumatic convincing, because that social stigma is also there. The knowledge of the society's initial response to that kind of woman. Most of the people who have been following these revelations of the Hema Commission or any rape account are voyeuristic in nature. That's why the video of the Manipur women being paraded naked became viral, because everybody wanted to see a stripped woman being paraded and things. So that voyeuristic, to overcome that and yet go public, has to mean that that woman has suffered. Maybe 1 in 10 might be doing it out of spitefulness or something, but the other 9 would have come to that stage after a lot of traumatic self-questioning. So, just merely because they cannot produce evidence in court doesn't mean that what they're saying is not true. And that is where I suggested that even if the court does not convict them, a social boycott is called for as a punishment to do that. This has happened in Hollywood. Hollywood has also gone through this kind of the Me Too movement.
Weinstein.
And many of these big stars and big names in Hollywood have seen their careers come to a standstill. So that is the context I was talking about. That the society also has a responsibility, and they can't just say that, oh, but that allegation was not sustained by the court. We have to look at it from the point of view of the woman, that how much courage she must have had to build up to go clean in society, in the society in its present form, where, when a rape thing is thing, you still hear the opinions of what was she doing at that late in a public place, or why was she dressed in a certain manner, and if she is in the pub when she's asking for it, kind of thing. And when society automatically jumps to those kind of conclusions, the woman who comes out and accuses somebody will have thought of all that before she build up the courage to do that. And so it becomes very essential that no matter what, we sympathize with that.
My question was about, we always talk about due process.
Yeah. No, the due process is very important.
Yes.
But we have to also think about the humanitarian aspect of this. We need to be supportive of the courageous woman. Can't, because the court has the luxury to say, we are sorry, we would have believed you, but the evidence provided was insufficient, and have an escape route. But if society starts doing that, then it sends out a signal to women that unless you have ironclad evidence, don't dare accuse anybody of doing that, because otherwise you will be hounded, you will be isolated, kind of thing.
One question that I had is at Tushar G, that is your
Twitter handle.
Twitter
Yes.
handle. So recently, other day you put a post from Nathuram Godse to Lawrence Bishnoi, Sanghi's idolized murderers. That was what you tweeted.
Isn't it true? Because as soon as, look at what happened, Baba Siddiqui got murdered, and suddenly all the Sanghi handles are glorifying Lawrence Bishnoi and suggesting his next victim and all that openly. They're not bothered. They are known Sanghi handles, and so it's very apparent. There have been instances of Nathuram temples being built. There have been instances of him being worshipped on his anniversaries and things. So the tradition continues. I've said nothing new.
But my question is it fair to equate these two, like Nathuram with the Mr. Godse and
In
Bishnoi?
relation to RSS,
Okay.
it's absolute fair.
I see.
In relation to RSS, it's absolutely fair. Because I have said they are RSS's poster boys. And so it's very fair. And murderer is murderer.
Of course. This is my last question. This is something that we discussed because, as you said, the Gandhiji's assassination is celebrated in many places.
Yeah.
Somewhere you still see flexes of Bapuji being put up and people shooting at it and so on and so forth. So the way most of us look at it is Bapuji is not a person, he's an idea, a larger concept of what could be. And so is the Mahatma really dead, or is he in the process of being killed by what is today?
Well, they killed the human being.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Since then, they've been trying to murder the ideology also. And we couldn't save the human being, but we have to defend the ideology. That's my philosophy.
But do you think the space for that ideology has been shrinking over time?
It has been shrinking because of the campaign of lies and also because of the apathy of the so-called legacy holders of Gandhi, including me. We've been complacent for too long. We've believed that the Gandhi ideology is so huge, so omnipresent, that nothing can damage it. And in front of our eyes, it has been compressed, it has been contracted, and it has been alienated. And we are as guilty. People like me are as guilty as the Sanghis, who have made it their life mission to murder the ideology after murdering the man.
Just a follow-up question. I said this would be my last, but there are people who say that, for example, the national flag is a protected symbol, the Ashok Chakra is a protected symbol. In the same way, the Mahatma should be a protected symbol.
He is.
He is.
Under the National Emblems Act, he is listed. The flag, the national emblem, Bapu and Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj are the icons who are mentioned in the National Emblems Act and Protection of National Emblems Act. But it has never been implemented. It has never been utilized to prosecute abusers of these icons. So, you can look it up. Just look up the
Thank you,
National
but I was
Emblems
completely
Act.
unaware because I knew that desecration of the flag is a
Yeah.
crime, was punished many times.
And
Desecration-
Bapu is equated with the flag. I have so many times written when Bapu's image or his name has been besmirched.
Yes.
I have written to the government
Okay.
that you have this law
Okay.
and you have the right to prosecute. Why don't you? But they have never bothered to do that.
Why haven't you ever considered approaching a court?
I have approached the court, but I cannot use the National Emblems Act because I'm a private citizen. The government has the authority to prosecute under that. So I have no recourse but to approach the government.
Thank you. Thank you for setting the record straight. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that education.
How would you know? Because independent India has never applied that that provision. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Tushar
You're most
Gandhi.
welcome. You're most welcome.
Hope to
Thank
meet you again. And thank you for
Yes.
standing up for everything that is valuable. Thank you.
Well, that's the only thing we can do. I think we need to stand up for what we believe in more often than we are doing.